I want you to picture a specific kind of silence. It's the silence that happens in a very expensive room around a very long mahogany table right after someone has asked a question that, well, just doesn't have a good answer.
You know the one.
Oh, yeah. You know the room I'm talking about. The air conditioning is set just a little too cold.
Always.
The chairs probably cost more than my first car. And at the head of that table sits the regional CEO. Let's just call him the boss.
And let's be honest, in this scenario, the boss is not smiling. Not at all. The boss is looking at a single sheet of paper, a spreadsheet printout maybe, and their brow is furrowed.
Exactly. And you are standing at the other end of that table. Maybe you're the finance director. Maybe you're the CFO. And you're armed with a clicker for your slide deck, a spreadsheet that you played over the night before, and a narrative.
A very carefully constructed narrative.
But the slide on the screen is it's bleeding red numbers. And the boss looks up, locks eyes with you from across that polished wood, and asks the most terrifying question in the entire corporate lexicon.
Why are we trailing the budget?
The chills. Just hearing it.
That moment right there. That is the crucible. That is the monthly business review, or MBR. And people think finance is just math, just numbers on a page. It isn't. In that moment, finance is combat.
It feels like a trial. It really does.
It is an inquisition. I mean, it is where careers are forged or where they are very, very quietly dismantled. If you survive the MBR, you survive another month. If you fumble the narrative,
you might find yourself pursuing other opportunities.
That's the polite way to put it, yes.
So today we were doing something a little different on this deep dive. We aren't just going to talk about finance concepts in the abstract. This isn't a lecture.
No, this is applied science.
We are going to analyze a series of specific battlefield scenarios from inside one of these high-stakes meetings.
And we have the goods. We have a stack of source materials here. Transcripts, essentially, that capture the literal dialogue between a finance director and a CEO during a particularly brutal review. We are going to dissect their defensive maneuvers.
We're going to look at how they handle missed budgets, how they explain cash that's trapped in Vietnam, what they do about surprise audits, and that frantic attempt to explain why profit is down even though sales are technically up.
The great paradox.
This is the language of survival in the C-suite. The mission today is to decode the story behind the numbers, because the numbers never, ever tell the whole story, do they?
Never. The numbers are just the crime scene photos. The story. The story is the investigation.
I love that. Crime scene photos. Okay, let's walk into the room. The meeting has just started. You've got your lukewarm coffee, you're nervous, and we jump right into the first skirmish. The outline calls this the top-line trap.
Ah, yes. This is the classic opening move, the sales versus profitability paradox.
Yeah.
It's where the interrogation always begins.
So looking at the transcript, the CFO opens with what sounds like a victory lap. At first, they say top-line revenue reached $10 million.
Sounds good so far.
And then they drop this stat. That is a 5% increase year over year.
Okay, pause right there. If you were running a lemonade stand or a small family business, 5% growth is cause for celebration. You pop the champagne. You're bigger than you were last year. You're winning.
That's what I would think. If I told you our audience grew 5%, I'd expect a high five.
But in the C-suite, year over year is just. It's interesting history. It's trivia. The boss doesn't care about history. The boss cares about the promise.
Yeah.
And the promise is the budget.
And that's where the trap springs, isn't it?
Yeah.
The CFO immediately has to admit, right after that good news,
Here it comes.
we are trailing the budget by 3%. And you can just feel the air go out of the room.
Oh, absolutely. And that is the difference. Trailing the budget means you broke your promise to the shareholders. You said you'd deliver X, and you delivered X minus 3%. The fact that you grew 5% over last year is irrelevant if the plan, the promise, called for 8% growth.
So the history doesn't matter, only the forecast.
Only the plan.
The boss pounces on this instantly. I'm reading the transcript here, and the tone is it's icy. The boss asks, if revenue is up, why are we missing the budget? Is it a volume issue or a pricing strategy failure?
Whoa. That is a brutal question. It's a binary trap. There's no good answer to that.
How so? It sounds like a straightforward question.
Think about the politics of the room. I mean, really think about who's sitting around that table. If the CFO says it's a volume issue, who are they pointing at?
The sales team.
The VP of sales. They are throwing him right under the bus. They are saying the sales team couldn't move the product. Now, what if they say the other thing? It's a pricing strategy failure.
Then they're blaming What, marketing? Themselves?
They're blaming the marketing director for setting the wrong price, and they're blaming themselves for signing off on it. So either way,
Yeah.
they are creating an enemy at the table.
So no matter what they answer, someone's going to be giving them the evil eye for the rest of the meeting.
Precisely. It's a political minefield disguised as a math problem.
So how do they handle it? The transcript says the CFO starts with, it's a bit of both, which honestly feels like a total cop-out.
It is, but it buys a few seconds.
And then they dive into the data. They say sales volume actually increased by 2%, so they moved more boxes. They shipped more widgets.
Okay, so that's a point for the sales team. See, boss, we sold more stuff.
Right, but the ASP, the average selling price dropped.
There it is.
Okay, so they sold more stuff, that they sold it for cheaper than they planned.
Yes. And now comes the crucial part, the why. The boss doesn't just want the what. They demand the why.
Right, and here is the why they offer. The CFO claims they ran aggressive promotions in the European market.
A classic maneuver.
They frame it as a strategic trade-off. They literally call it prioritizing market share over immediate margin.
That is the oldest trick in the book. It's brilliant, really. We aren't losing money. We are investing in dominance. It's a great narrative because it sounds proactive. It sounds like you're on the offensive, capturing territory. We are slashing prices to crush the competition in Europe.
But is it true? I mean, is that really what happened, or is it just spin?
It's defensible spin. It could be true. But here is the massive gaping hole in that strategy. If you drop your price to sell more units, you are betting on one very, very specific thing.
What's that?
You are betting that your costs will stay flat or even go down. You need efficiency to make up for the lower price tag. You're playing a volume game.
And according to these documents, the universe did not cooperate with that bet.
Not even close. The universe laughed at that bet.
So while they were discounting prices in Europe to chase this market share, their cost of goods sold rose by 7%, month over month.
7% in 30 days. That's massive.
Yeah.
That's not normal inflation. That is a supply chain shock. That's a fire alarm going off in your engine room.
The source blames raw material price surges and logistics bottlenecks. So, okay, let me get this straight. You are selling the widget for $90 instead of $100 because you're investing in market share. But at the same time, it suddenly costs you $85 to make it instead of the $75 you planned for.
And suddenly, your profit margin, which used to be a healthy $25, is now $5. You are doing way more work, shipping more boxes, managing more logistics, handling more customer calls for a fraction of the profit.
You're running faster just to fall behind.
You're running yourself into the ground.
The transcript uses a specific term here, a gross margin squeeze of 150 basis points. Now, I see basis points thrown around a lot. 150 basis points? It sounds so small. It's 1.5%. Why is the boss losing sleep over 1.5%?
I'm so glad you asked that.
Yeah.
Because this is where people who aren't in finance get lost. In manufacturing or distribution or really any mature industry, you aren't running a software company with 90% margins.
Okay.
You're fighting for pennies. Your total net margin after you pay for everything, salaries, rent, marketing, might only be 5 or 6% total. That's your take home as a company.
Right, the final profit.
So if your expected profit was 5% and you lose 1.5% to this squeeze, you didn't just lose a little money, you just wiped out 30% of the company's total take-home profit for the month. Gone.
Wow. Okay, put it that way. And it sounds like a complete disaster.
It is a disaster. That 150 basis points is the difference between buying shareholders a new yacht or telling them they don't get a dividend this quarter. That tiny number is the difference between a bonus pool for the staff and a layoff round. It's everything.
The boss clearly understands this math because they immediately look for a scapegoat. The question in the transcript is, why wasn't our hedging strategy effective enough to offset this?
Hedging. The insurance policy, that wasn't.
Explain that to me like I'm 5. What should have happened here?
Okay. So if you're a company that buys a lot of a certain commodity, copper, oil, coffee beans, whatever, prices fluctuate, it's risky. So you go to a bank and you buy something called a forward contract.
Okay.
You basically agree to buy your copper at $4 a pound in February, regardless of what the open market does.
So if the price shoots up to $5, you look like a genius because you're still paying $4.
You are a hero. You saved the company. It's insurance against price surges. The boss is asking, we pay for this insurance. We have a line item in the budget for it. Why did we still get hit by the price surge?
And the CFO's defense is, well, it's painful to read. They say, our current contracts were locked in before the latest price hike.
Ouch. Translation: we bought insurance for the wrong storm. Or, more likely, we bought insurance for last year's prices and the contracts expired. Or they didn't cover enough volume for our new aggressive sales plan.
So it's a timing mismatch. They forecasted demand based on old data. They were driving while looking in the rearview mirror.
Exactly. And in a volatile market, that gets you killed. It's a fundamental failure of forecasting.
But look at the pivot here. I'm noticing a pattern. The CFO doesn't just say, oops, my bad. They immediately move to a fix. They say they are renegotiating with secondary suppliers to optimize unit costs.
That is rule number 1 of the financial review. Never, ever, ever present a problem without an action plan. You can't just say, the hedge failed.
You'd be fired on the spot.
You have to say, the hedge failed, so we are now going to go squeeze our secondary suppliers until they give us a better deal. It shows you are still fighting. You aren't a victim of the market. You're a combatant. You're taking action.
Okay, so the top line is a complete mess. We're selling more, but we're making less. Margins are being squeezed by inflation. The hedge didn't work. If I'm the CEO, I'm looking at this and thinking, okay, if we can't make money on the product, we have to stop spending money on ourselves.
Which brings us inevitably to the cut the fat conversation. Where can we save money inside our own house?
The outline calls this segment 2, the efficiency paradox.
And paradox is exactly the right word, because cutting costs is never as simple as it looks. It usually creates new, unexpected problems.
So the CFO moves to OpEx operating expenses. This is the stuff that keeps the lights on, right? Rent, salaries, travel, marketing.
All the internal stuff. And usually, this is where the CFO tries to play the hero. Look, boss, we saved money.
And they do. The transcript says they have successfully reduced travel and marketing spend to stay under budget.
And that's what we call low-hanging fruit. It is incredibly easy to send an email saying, no more business class flights, or cancel the Q3 TV ad campaign. You can do that in an afternoon and see the savings tomorrow.
It feels good in the moment, right? You see the savings immediately on the P&L.
It feels like you're taking control. And it worked, partially. The transcript says the operating margin is holding steady at 12%. So, despite the raw material crisis, they kept the operating profit flat by starving the travel and marketing budget. They plugged the hole in the boat by tearing boards off the deck.
And the boss isn't applauding. The boss is looking at a different line item. The fixed cost ratio is creeping up.
This is the silent killer in a business.
What's the difference here? Why is fixed cost worse than the other stuff? Travel and marketing are variable, right?
Well, sort of. But think of it this way. Variable costs, like raw materials, go up and down with your sales. If you sell 0 widgets, you buy 0 raw materials. But fixed costs, rent, salaries for your core team, insurance, software licenses, you pay those even if you sell absolutely nothing.
They are the concrete blocks tied around your ankles when you're trying to swim.
That's a perfect analogy. If your fixed cost ratio creeps up, it means your break-even point gets higher and higher. You have to sell more just to survive, just to keep your head above water.
And the culprit here turns out to be a new ERP system.
Groans. Oh, the ERP. Of course it is.
You sound like you have some personal trauma there.
Anyone who has worked in corporate finance for more than a year has ERP trauma. Enterprise resource planning. These are massive, sprawling software suites. Think SAP, Oracle, Microsoft Dynamics that are supposed to run the entire company. Inventory, payroll, shipping, finance, everything in one place.
And let me guess. It's expensive.
It is wildly, astronomically expensive, and it is never, ever on time or on budget. The transcript mentions initial setup costs. This means they are paying an army of consultants $300 an hour to configure the software. That is why the fixed costs are blowing up.
So the boss sees this money pit. They see marketing, which actually drives sales, being cut to the bone. And they see this computer system sucking up millions. So the boss asks, what about operational efficiency? Basically, I'm paying all this money for this fancy system. Show me the savings.
A very fair question. And this is where the CFO pulls a masterstroke, a beautiful piece of financial storytelling. They deploy a silver lining metric.
I noticed this. They completely pivot the conversation and highlight the labor productivity index.
It sounds incredibly impressive, doesn't it? Very scientific.
Labor productivity index improved by 4% due to process automation.
Let's decode what that actually means for everyone listening. It means the new software let them automate some boring, repetitive tasks so the existing staff could do more work in fewer hours.
So they connected the bad cost, the expensive over-budget software, to a good result. Our people are working 4% faster.
Exactly. It reframes the expense completely. It's not bloat anymore. It's building muscle. It's an investment. They are arguing that the high fixed cost today will lead to a leaner, faster, more profitable company tomorrow.
Is that true, or is it just financial gymnastics?
Well, it's absolutely gymnastics. But look at the alternative. If you admit the ERP is just a giant money pit right now with no return, the project might get canceled.
Yeah.
Or worse, you get fired for approving it in the first place. By pointing to that 4% productivity bump, the CFO is buying time. They're saying, the pain is real, I see it, but look, the medicine is starting to work.
Don't look at the bill, look at the muscles.
It's a great defense. But here's the catch. You can have all the muscles in the world. You can have the best software. You can have great productivity. But none of that matters if you run out of oxygen.
And in business, oxygen is cash.
Cash is the only fact. Everything else is an opinion. Profit is an opinion. You can massage a profit number with accruals and depreciation and all sorts of accounting tricks. But cash, you check the bank account. It's either there or it isn't.
This leads us directly to segment 3, the cash flow crisis. And reading through this part of the transcript, this is where the sweat really starts to break out on the CFO's forehead.
This is the part of the meeting where the room goes dead quiet and everyone leans in.
The metric that sets off the alarm is DSO days, sales outstanding.
Right. Let's make sure everyone understands DSO because it's one of the most critical health indicators for a business. It is the IOU clock. It measures how many days, on average, it takes for a customer to actually put money in your bank account after you've shipped them your product.
Ideally, you want that number to be 0. You want cash on the barrelhead, right?
In a perfect world, yes. But in B2B, business to business, you give terms, net 30, net 60. You're essentially giving your customers a short-term loan.
And the transcript shows their DSO jumped from 45 days to 52 days.
That's a 7-day spike in 1 month.
7 days. Now, again, that doesn't sound like a lot. It's 1 week. Why is that a full-blown crisis?
In your personal life, a week is nothing. In a $100 million business, 7 days of cash drag is catastrophic. Let's do the math. $100 million in sales a year is about $275,000 a day.
Okay.
So 7 days means almost $2 million of your cash is missing. It's out there, somewhere in the ether, instead of in your bank. You are funding your customers' operations for free for an entire extra week. You are acting as their bank at 0% interest.
And while you're waiting for that $2 million check, you still have to pay your staff this Friday. You still have to pay for the raw materials for next month's production. You still have to pay the rent.
Exactly. If that gap gets too wide, you simply run out of money to pay your own bills. That is how profitable companies go bankrupt. They grow too fast, their DSO blows out, and they suffocate.
The boss calls it a red flag, and they pinpoint the problem area immediately. Distributors in Southeast Asia are overdue by 60-plus days.
Oof, 60-plus. Southeast Asia can be complex. You're dealing with different banking systems, currency controls, layers of sub-distributors. But 60 days overdue is entering the real danger zone. That's not just slow to pay. That's bad debt territory. That's where you start wondering if they even have the money to pay you.
So the CFO pulls out what the transcript calls the nuclear option. They have halted further shipments to these accounts.
A credit hold. It is the single hardest, most politically charged decision the CFO has to make.
Why? It seems completely logical. You don't pay me. I don't send you more stuff. My 5-year-old understands that.
Think about the internal politics again. The sales director for Asia is probably screaming in the hallway. I guarantee it. They're saying, if you stop shipping, I lose the customer forever. They'll go to a competitor. You are destroying a relationship I spent years building.
So the CFO is essentially starting a civil war inside the company just to save the cash.
They have to, because the sales director is worried about their commission this quarter. The CFO is worried about the company going bankrupt next quarter. If you keep shipping product to someone who isn't paying, you aren't running a business anymore. You're running a charity. And frankly, this company cannot afford to be a charity right now.
But wait, it gets so much worse. It's not just the customers stiffing them. There is a massive chunk of money, $5 million, trapped inside their own company, specifically inside the Vietnam subsidiary.
This is a classic intercompany risk, a self-inflicted wound.
Explain the setup. We own the Vietnam branch, right? It's our company. Why can't we just call them up and tell them to wire the money back to HQ?
You would think it's that easy, wouldn't you? It's all one family. But legally, and for tax purposes, they are often separate entities. And in this case, the CFO explains that the Vietnam branch is suffering from a working capital mismatch.
That sounds like some very fancy corporate speak for we spent it.
It is. That's exactly what it is. But they didn't spend it on parties and yachts. They spent it on capacity expansion. They built a new factory line. They bought heavy machinery. So on paper, on the balance sheet, the Vietnam branch is rich. They have millions of dollars in fixed assets.
They are house poor.
The perfect analogy. They have shiny new machines, but $0 in the checking account to send back to HQ as dividends or to repay loans.
The boss asks the key question. Is the Vietnam branch insolvent? I mean, are they broke?
And the CFO has to give this careful answer. Technically, no. Functionally, yes. They have assets, but they have no liquidity. The cash is trapped in concrete and steel.
So what do? You can't just repossess the factory that you already own.
It's a nightmare. The CFO proposes a technical accounting fix, an intercompany loan conversion.
Which means?
Instead of demanding the cash now, which Vietnam doesn't have HQ, converts that debt into a formal long-term loan. It kicks the can down the road. It cleans up the books for this month's review. It makes the balance sheet look better, but it doesn't solve the core problem.
The cash is still stuck.
The cash is still stuck in a factory in Vietnam, not in the bank account in New York where they need it to pay bills.
And if that wasn't enough of a headache, there is one more cash trap mentioned here. Duty drawbacks. Another $2 million tied up.
Size. Duty drawbacks.
You sighed again. That's twice you've had a visceral reaction.
Because this is the definition of bureaucratic hell. Let's break down what a duty drawback is, because it sounds incredibly boring, but it's actually free money that governments owe you.
Okay, I'm listening.
So when this company imports raw materials, let's say it's high-grade steel, into Vietnam to make their widgets, they have to pay an import tax, a customs duty.
Right, makes sense.
But the Vietnamese government, to encourage manufacturing and exports, says, hey, if you take that steel, turn it into a widget, and then export it to America or Europe, we will give you that import tax back. That refund is the drawback.
So it's a rebate, basically.
It's a rebate. It's their money. It's sitting there in a government account. But in this transcript, the government is holding the check for $2 million.
Why? What's the holdup?
The transcript says, new documentation requirements for origin verification.
Someone changed a form.
Someone, somewhere, in some government office, changed a form. Maybe a stamp is in the wrong place now? Maybe the digital signature on the shipping manifest didn't match the physical signature on the customs declaration. And because of that tiny administrative hiccup, $2 million is frozen in customs limbo.
That is agonizing. It's your money and you can't get it because of a piece of paper.
It is. And notice the boss's reaction. The boss doesn't care about the form. The boss asks, when is the cash landing? That's all that matters. And the CFO has to explain that they've deployed local customs brokers, who are essentially fixers, to go down to the customs office and argue the case. It's a ground war, person to person, just to get your own money back.
Okay, so let's just recap this whole cash situation because it's dizzying. Customers in Asia aren't paying on time, so DSO is up. The Vietnam branch spent all its cash on new machines, so $5 million is stuck.
Trapped in assets.
And the customs office is sitting on a $2 million refund because of paperwork.
Correct.
That is nearly $10 million of liquidity that should be on the books, available, but it just isn't.
That is a heart attack waiting to happen for a company this size.
And just when you think the pressure couldn't possibly get any higher, we have to look outside the company, not at customers, not at suppliers, but at the regulators. Segment 4, the minefield of compliance and accounting.
The fun never stops. The external audit is coming.
And the transcript flags a very specific risk, transfer pricing. This sounds incredibly technical, but the boss seems genuinely worried about it. Why is this such a big deal?
Transfer pricing is probably the biggest hot-button issue in global tax right now. It refers to the price you charge yourself when moving goods between your own companies in different countries.
So like selling parts from the HQ in the US to the assembly factory in Vietnam.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, imagine this scenario. The US has a corporate tax rate of, say, 21%. Vietnam, to attract investment, might have a tax holiday or a much lower rate, like 5%.
Okay, I'm with you.
If you're the CFO, you might be tempted to sell the parts from the US to Vietnam for a really, really cheap price, at cost even. So the US entity makes zero profit and pays zero tax.
And then the Vietnam entity assembles the widget and sells it for a huge profit.
And pays tax at that much lower 5% rate.
So you are shifting the profit to the place with the lower taxes.
Exactly. And governments, especially in high-tax countries like the US and in Europe, absolutely hate this. They view it as tax evasion, plain and simple.
So the tax man thinks you are cheating.
The transcript says the tax authorities view their current pricing as a red flag. They're already on the radar. The CFO admits there's a risk of a major audit and potential penalties.
So what's the defense? How do you prove you aren't cheating?
You have to prove something called arm's length pricing.
Arm's length, what does that mean?
It's the golden rule of transfer pricing. You have to prove with mountains of documentation that the price you charge your own subsidiary is the exact same price you would have charged a complete stranger, a third-party company at arm's length.
And how on earth do you prove that?
You hire very expensive lawyers and accountants. The CFO mentions bringing in a Big Four accounting firm. That's Deloitte, PwC, EY, or KPMG.
That can't be cheap.
It is not cheap, but it's an insurance policy. You pay them $100,000, maybe more, to write a thick report saying, yes, we've analyzed the market and this price is fair and defensible. If the taxman attacks, you hold up that report as your shield.
Okay, so while they are worrying about the taxman, they also find a skeleton in their own closet during the month-end reconciliation. The topic is inventory valuation, specifically obsolescence provision.
Oh, this always hurts. This is finding treasure that's turned to dust.
They found $1 million worth of slow-moving stock.
Slow-moving is the politest corporate euphemism for stuff nobody wants to buy.
The source says it's due to shifting customer preferences.
Translation. We guessed wrong. Maybe the market moved on. Maybe a competitor launched a much better product. Maybe the color went out of style. The reason doesn't matter. The result is you now have $1 million of dead weight sitting in a warehouse gathering dust.
The boss calls it $1 million of pure cash tied up in the warehouse.
That is a very vivid image.
It is, because it's true. And every single day that stock sits there, you pay rent to store it. You pay to insure it. You might even pay taxes on it. It's actively costing you money to hold on to your past mistake.
So the CFO makes the call. They decide to liquidate it, run a clearance promotion.
Sell it cheap. Get 50 cents on the dollar. Maybe even 25. It's painful because it crushes your margins. Remember our conversation in segment 1? But it frees up cash. And right now, cash is king. It's better to have half the money now than zero money later.
But then comes the blow that, according to the transcript, really angers the boss. The write-off.
This is the most painful moment in the entire review, I think. The CFO announces they are increasing the allowance for doubtful accounts by $500,000.
Okay, translation for everyone. They are officially admitting, on the record, that $500,000 worth of sales they already booked are probably never going to be paid for. The customers are going bust.
The boss is furious. The question is, was this not flagged during the previous quarterly review? Basically, why are you surprising me with a $500,000 loss right now?
And look at the CFO's defense. It's fascinating. It's a masterclass in preemptive action. They say, we believe this conservative approach is necessary to ensure balance sheet integrity before the audit.
Balance sheet integrity? That sounds so noble, so responsible.
It's purely tactical. The CFO knows the auditors are coming in a few weeks. If the auditors are the ones who find that bad debt, they will force write-off, and the CFO looks incompetent at best, or dishonest at worst.
So the CFO is taking the hit now voluntarily to get ahead of it.
It's a strategy called kitchen sinking. You throw all the bad news, all the dirty dishes into the sink right now. Take all the pain in one go. You clean up the books yourself, so when the auditor arrives, everything looks pristine.
It's like a confession to avoid a conviction.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah. But the boss hates it because it ruins the net income for the month. It's a direct hit to the bottom line.
So we've covered the operation, the cash, the compliance, but a company needs fuel to grow. Let's move to segment 5, financing the future. This is where we get into debt, interest rates, and the wonderful world of foreign exchange.
Right. This is where the macro economy crashes into the boardroom. You can run a perfect factory, have perfect marketing, but if the global economy turns against you, you can still lose your shirt.
The transcript kicks off with a significant unrealized FX loss, FX being foreign exchange.
Of course. We live in a global world. This company clearly has operations in Vietnam and Europe, selling in local currencies, but they report their overall results in U.S. dollars.
So what happened? What went wrong?
The transcript says they have dollar-denominated debts. This means they borrowed money in U.S. dollars. But they earn a lot of their revenue in other currencies, euros or Vietnamese dong.
And the dollar got stronger against those currencies.
And the dollar got much stronger. So when the dollar gets stronger, your foreign debt effectively gets bigger. You have to earn more euros or more dong just to pay back the same amount of dollars you borrowed.
So you could be doing everything right, but you're still losing money. You didn't sell less, you didn't spend more. The currency just moved against you.
Exactly. You did nothing wrong operationally, but financially, you are bleeding. It's a silent killer on the P&L statement.
And the boss, predictably, asks about the hedging policy again. I thought we were covered on this.
And the CFO has to admit another failure. The currency depreciated beyond the projected range of the hedge. Their insurance policy had a limit. Say it protected them if the euro drops to 105 against the dollar. But maybe it dropped all the way to 102. The storm blew the roof right off the shelter.
So what's the adjustment? The CFO says they're increasing the hedge ratio to 70%.
They're being more conservative. They are locking down 70% of their future currency exposure. It costs more money to buy that much insurance, but it buys certainty. After a loss like this, the board is willing to pay for certainty. They can't afford another surprise.
Meanwhile, the company is still hungry for cash. We know that from the crisis in segment 3. The debt-to-equity ratio is creeping up, and the CFO is in the middle of negotiating a revolving credit facility.
A revolver.
It sounds like a weapon.
In a way, it is. It's a corporate survival weapon. Think of a revolver like a massive corporate credit card or a bank overdraft facility. You don't have to use it. It just sits there empty. But if you need $10 million on a Tuesday to make payroll because a big customer payment is late, you can draw it down instantly.
But the boss is worried about interest rates. The transcript mentions we are in a high-rate environment. Borrowing is expensive now.
It is. Every dollar you borrow on that revolver might cost you 7, 8, 9% interest. That eats directly into your already squeezed profit margins.
So why do it?
The CFO argues it's a preemptive measure for liquidity during their plant expansion. They're saying, yes, it's expensive insurance, but running out of cash is fatal. It's much better to have an expensive credit line you don't use than to need money desperately and not have it. One is an expense, the other is bankruptcy.
Speaking of building that factory, we have a CapEx overrun.
Of course we do. CapEx, capital expenditure. The big money for big projects.
The new production line is 10% over budget. The reason given is rising construction costs.
Construction costs always go up. It's almost a law of physics in business. Concrete, steel, labor, it never gets cheaper than what you put in the original budget.
The boss is clearly not happy. The quote is, "An over-budget project is never a good start." But the CFO pulls out a shield called IRR.
The internal rate of return. This is the magic number, the mathematical justification for the entire project.
The CFO says, yes, it costs 10% more to build, but the IRR is still 18%. And they compare this to the company's hurdle rate, which is 12%.
Okay, let's explain hurdle rate for a second. It's like a high jump for projects. The company sets a bar, say, 12%. If a proposed project can't generate a return on investment that clears that 12% bar, we don't do it. It's a waste of capital.
So the CFO is basically saying, look, even with the extra cost, this project is jumping 18%. We are clearing the bar easily.
Right. It completely shuts down the over-budget argument. It reframes it. Don't worry about the cost overrun. The profit machine we are building is so good, it's still going to print money well above our minimum standard.
And what's the reason the return is still so high? Automation. The CFO argues that the new line will reduce future labor costs so much that it more than pays for the extra construction spending today.
And see how it all connects back to that efficiency paradox in segment 2. Spend money on machines and software to save money on people.
Which is the perfect, if slightly grim, transition to our final segment, segment 6, the HR factor. Because labor costs aren't just a line on a spreadsheet, they're human beings.
Right. The numbers on a spreadsheet are people in the office, with families and mortgages.
The headcount status is reported as flat, and we learn there is a hiring freeze in non-essential sectors.
That is standard operating procedure when you are missing budget. Freeze the headcount. Stop the bleeding. It's the first thing you do.
But there's a huge warning sign flashing red on the dashboard, high turnover in the IT department.
Now, connect the dots. I want you and everyone listening to really think about this. Remember segment 2?
The ERP system. The giant, expensive, over-budget software project.
They are in the middle of installing a massive, complex, company-altering new computer system. Who installs, maintains, and fixes that system?
The IT department.
Exactly. So if you have high turnover in your IT department right in the middle of a massive software rollout, you are in deep, deep trouble. That is a major strategic risk. The people who know how the new engine is supposed to work are walking out the door.
The boss asks a very pointed question. Is it compensation or leadership?
which is corporate code for, are we not paying them enough, or do they just hate their manager?
The CFO says they are conducting exit interviews and reviewing incentive schemes to remain competitive.
Which implies they suspect it's money. In a competitive tech market, if you freeze hiring and squeeze budgets, your best tech talent will just get a call from a recruiter and leave for a 20% raise at a company that isn't in survival mode.
It's a vicious cycle, isn't it? You cut costs to save money in segment 2, which then drives away the critical people you need to make the company efficient in segment 6, which makes the ERP project fail, which in turn drives costs up even more.
That is the tightrope the CFO walks every single day. You pull one lever over here and you don't realize that something else breaks over there.
So we've looked at the battle map. We've seen all the defensive maneuvers. We've seen the traps and the paradoxes. What does this all mean when we zoom out?
I think we just watched a masterclass in what I'd call defensive piloting. This CFO was flying through a storm.
They weren't just reporting the news, were they?
No, absolutely not. Reporting news is for journalists. A CFO's job in an MBR is action plans.
Right. Look at the pattern again and again through this whole thing. DSO is up. Action. Halt shipments. Tax audit looming. Action. Hire the big four. Raw materials are surging. Action. Renegotiate with secondary suppliers. Inventory is stuck. Action. Liquidate it for cash.
The art of the review isn't the number. It's the story you tell about what you are going to do about the number. It's about demonstrating control, even when things are chaotic.
And the CFO ended the entire meeting with a promise of a downside scenario planning session.
That really stood out to me. The boss wanted conservative estimates. The CFO promised a full-blown plan for a U-shaped recovery, not just hoping for the best.
It makes you wonder. We often think of business leaders as needing to be these visionary optimists. Yeah, we want the Steve Jobs reality distortion field.
We do. We want to be inspired. But in the boardroom, during a financial review, optimism can be the single most dangerous emotion. If you are optimistic about cash flow and you are wrong, you miss payroll. If you are optimistic about the tax audit and you are wrong, you face massive fines.
That is a chilling thought, which leaves us with a final question for you to think about. When does conservative accounting cross the line into managing earnings? And when does optimism become professional negligence?
That is the question every listener should ask themselves the next time they look at their own business review, whether it's for a whole company or just their department. Are you just reporting history? Or are you shaping the future?
And more importantly, are you ready to answer the question, why are we trailing the budget?
Always have an answer and an action plan.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the war room. We'll see you next time.